You work hard in the gym. Your body only deserves the best. Isojet by Evogen Nutrition, featuring Evozyme technology, ultimate in pure whey isolate.
I feel like there's two kinds of bodybuilders out there. You have ones that are just have these genetic body parts who train them and they just grow because they're genetically inclined to grow. And then you have ones that really focus on those body parts to be able to manipulate them into growing. And I feel that what he's done so far is been able to get what he has and accentuate it to a degree that's very impressive. But now, with those weaker body parts, it's a matter of those little tweaks and those little manipulations that are going to help complete his physique. The first training session we had together was about a month ago, and then we trained again yesterday. And I feel like just in the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's been able to improve his hamstrings just by really focusing on being able to get that mind-muscle connection. His number one deficit, in my opinion, is his hamstrings. I think he's got an amazing quad sweep. I think that his hamstrings need to develop in terms of the three-dimensionality of them. Throwing in FST-7 workouts, as well as being able to really get prioritizing his hamstrings over his quads. Being able to do them in the beginning of the workout has also been huge.
You know, hamstrings is, there's a few little nagging weak areas that we want to fix, but hamstring is the big area that we want to really complete the physique. So we're putting everything we got into that. That's specifically why he chose to work that body part with me. And it definitely kind of let me know that I need to go harder on it. You know, the volume, we picked a lot more volume up than I'm used to doing. So the first time that we did it, I was just swore, like 5-6 days later, I was still feeling it. But ever since, I started incorporating it, so my body's starting to adapt to it, and I think I'm starting to grow and change with it. The one thing about the workouts is having him, or having someone there to push me along, is sometimes I'll have in my head that I'm going to do 10 reps and 4 partials, or 10 reps and 4 forced reps. So I'll do that and I'm done. A lot of times with him, he'll say, all right, let's do 8, and then all right, we're gonna do 3 more partials, and then once you do your 3 partials, he's like, all right, 1 more, and then you're sitting there like squeezing, like, all right, I'm done. And he's like, no, 1 more. So it kind of tricks your mind, like you're not ready for what's about to happen.
What I feel is going to really help his hamstring development is going to be the eccentric motion, as well as being able to do the different types of techniques to be able to increase the intensity, what I usually tend to call intensity multipliers, which are doing partials, doing negatives, doing forced reps, using those techniques at the end, or doing low volume FST-7 mixed up with things where you're using a chaos method so that your body doesn't get used to the exact same type of workout week after week.
This one, we actually just did hamstrings. Like the first time we did hams and quads both, so I actually thought I was gonna pass out before I left the gym. I was a little bit embarrassed. But this one, we just did hamstrings, which I was gonna be kind of an ancillary day because we want to just focus on that. And it was a little different. We did a lot more leg curling type movement. Most people think that FST-7 is set up for the end of the workout. We actually started with it and finished with it on leg curls. So that was a lot different intensity technique than I'm used to. So by the time the workout was over, trying to flex the hamstrings really wasn't an option. It was kind of numb.
We implemented sissy squats because they were able to really get that glute hamstring tie-in. And in the past, he'd never done them before. So we were able to use an apparatus at Gold's in Campbell, which is near San Jose. And when he was able to get that mind-muscle connection, he was able to take that back to Kentucky with him. And what he was able to do is employ a makeshift apparatus to be able to get that glute and hamstring to fire correctly. And in the past, he was able to do the machines where you're, lying leg curls, single, leg curls, several other types of exercises that employ a different derivative of a curl. And now he's been able to focus on being able to get not only those exercises, but the sissy squat to be able to really trigger that added growth that we need to be able to match those quads that we have.
The sissy squat, this is the first time, you know, that I've had to, I guess you say, jimmy rig my own up here at the gym. And we actually talked about this, and while we were training, I got on eBay, you know, in between sets, and I'm looking, I can actually buy one relatively cheap, and they're not very big. So I think I'm just gonna buy one to have at the gym, because it's something I really think that is gonna help my overall leg improvement. It's a completely different exercise than what I've ever done before. It looks like it's a quad exercise, and if done properly, you know, it really attacks the glutes and hams at a different angle that you can't get from any other movements.
So chaos method is when you're basically tricking the body into trying to grow by not having it prepared for what you're about to give it. So when I go in there and I train somebody, I turn around and I would train them like they wouldn't have been trained before for up to maybe a week. They will be sore. But they couldn't continue to keep doing that, otherwise they're going to be breaking down and end up becoming catabolic. What I do is I create an anabolic trigger by having an amazing workout, but then that workout will help them grow for the weeks to come. And then 4 to 6 weeks later, I'll come back and reintroduce another chaos workout to be able to trigger and break another plateau.
Good job. What you having on for me?
Yeah, I definitely think, you know, at the Arnold, people's gonna notice a huge change in my entire lower body. The hamstrings this year, I really don't think up until 2013, that was like, I wasn't really aware that that was something I needed to focus on. You know, when I did my pro debut, well, as an amateur, you know, I stood my grounds really well. You know, my quads are really good, you know, compared to everyone around me. The hamstrings are good, but whenever I stepped into the pro ranks, you know, I stepped up against Rolly and Essa and Lionel, and I was like, I actually know the leg development was definitely your first attention when it came to me. You know, I had the conditioning down, and I needed to get a little bigger, and I needed to focus on that area. So the past year or year and a half, that's been the primary focus. And I think over the last 5 or 6 weeks, you know, by incorporating some new techniques that I've never done before, it's given me a shock in my body.